another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story talking about the too big to fail phenomenon and how Donald Trump and some of his antics may actually codify this moving forward if the government continues on this path. And of course, we go in today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. This one is actually just a photo, and you'll be able to find it down in the description. So with that, let's actually jump into our daily debate, which is after 2008, 2009, did you ever think we would see another too big to fail government intervention moment? For those of you who've been around for a while, probably, you wouldn't be surprised. As a youngin', I thought it was never going to happen. I was like, oh, we learned our lesson, didn't we? I hadn't grown up quite yet, so obviously my opinion's a little bit different now. But if you were in that same age group, were you cynical? Were you hopeful? I want to know. And if you're a little bit older, maybe you thought, hey, we won't have something to this degree again. And I'm not saying we're there yet, but we may be headed towards it. So with that, we're going to jump into our article from alternet.org. Headline reads, Trump just accidentally revealed a dirty secret. And it has America's CEOs panicking. I know we haven't done a left-wing source in a while, so we're returning to it. The buyout of Intel, and buyout's not actually fair, a 10% stake in Intel with non-voting shares, obviously, as basically compensation for the government for giving them a large grant of money in the CHIPS Act that was actually signed under a different president, is a deal that has bifurcated the right. There's no doubt about that. It is creating a whole bunch of tension. Some people think it's a great idea. Some people think it's an absolutely terrible idea. If you've listened to me for a while, you know where I stand on this. And if you haven't listened to me before, then you may not know. I'm definitely a small government kind of person. I don't want the government involved in my life. I don't want it to be too heavily involved in our economies, if at all, though, of course, I leave room to be wrong on the benefits that some government intervention can bring. At the time when the CHIP Act actually happened, I said, I don't like this much government interference. I don't know if they should get this much direct grants, but maybe they could get tax subsidies. And that is a form of government intervention as well. So to pretend as though I don't entertain the idea would be idiotic, but this is a whole new level. Let me read Alternet's opinion on it real quick. Quote, as of the public support for private enterprise isn't enough, now President Trump is taking it to the next level by acquiring 10% of Intel's stock in exchange for the $8.9 billion the government is providing the company via the CHIPS and Science Act. Quote, from one angle, this certainly is an improvement over the big bank bailouts, where the taxpayer took all of the risk but received none of the upside once the banks become solvent again. But also, it marks a new version of too big to fail. After all, when socialist Trump takes a stake in a corporation, he certainly can't allow that corporation to fail and wipe out all the equity, end quote. Now, Alternet is leftist in general. I do not know if this article was written by a socialist, but it does make me really busts me up when I hear, oh, yeah, it takes too big to fail to a whole new level, when people on the socialist side of the agenda have continually, or I repeat, continually advocated for taking over entire industries and nationalizing them. That's exactly what you do. You, as the national government, you take on all of the risk, and obviously the nation takes on some of the reward, but it becomes a money pit because you cannot allow it to drop down, whether it be the jobs that you're now supporting, whether it be the fact that you need tanks. So even if it's a slow bureaucratic system, you have to continue to support it in order to build out military industry in the case of one of those corporations being publicized. So I find it deeply, deeply ironic. And that's not to say it's a bad point. Though I don't agree with the end means of this author if they are socialist or socialists in general. I do agree with their argument here, which is the government is taking a big stake and they are taking on the risk and the benefit for the American people, and they are also making them too big to fail. And as I said earlier, I came out of 2008 and 2009 a little bit disillusioned, but still hopeful that we would learn our lesson, and it seems that we are not once again. Over the generations upon generations since socialism and communism has been brought to the fore, the governments that wholeheartedly endorse it and take it on have drastically failed. Now there are mixed economies, and the U.S. is even a mixed economy, especially the amount of grants that we give in order to fund sciences, research, and everything of that sort. So to pretend as though we don't do any of it is idiotic. Not going to play that game. But the more involved you become in the economy, the more involved you become in the direct management of these companies, the more the rights of the people have to be limited in order to effectuate your change. Maybe people aren't allowed to change jobs because there is a necessity to have these be successful companies, and they need highly educated individuals in these positions. Maybe it's restricting the amount of power that other consumers can use or the public can use in order to power this large factory that this company has. Now, these are all hypothetical. None of these are happening with Intel, but the point overall is that the more you see this, the more the freedoms of the people are going to be limited because there are other interests at play rather than simply enabling them to make mistakes on their own. And once again, the socialists may be a little bit crazy with where they want to go with it, but that doesn't mean that they're off on this one. This is a fair criticism. And it does indeed have the U.S. CEO, the American CEO, a little bit worried. They're looking at this situation saying, whoa, hold on. What's going on here? Are we going to have to shell out part of our company for different grants? And I think that's not actually unfair. I want to read another quote that they have here. Quote, "By accident, Trump's overt support for Intel creates an opportunity for the Democrats to help the working class people secure their jobs from corporate greed. If the Democrats have any guts, granted, that's a big if, they would offer legislation prohibiting any corporation from receiving taxpayer funding or subsidies from implementing compulsory layoffs." And you may be thinking, well, okay, why is that a big deal? Because in the place where you allow for government control in any shape or form, you create a system that can be exploited in the future. You create a precedent that can be exploited in the future. And for those of you who are on the right saying, finally, we're taking our national security, our national infrastructure seriously, and we're investing in these sort of things, and we're taking a stake, we're trying to move the needle. And you deride the left for trying to be more involved in all these other companies and pushing their own agenda. You've created a system in which it's much easier to push their agenda in the future. You've created a system in which they can get equity in these companies and pressure them from the inside. Now, what are the alarm bells? Quote, "This transaction has sent alarm bells ringing in the executive suites of hundreds of corporations in the government dole. As one corporate lawyer put it, quote, virtually every company I've talked to, which is in a regular recipient of subsidies or grants from the government, is concerned right now." And they should be, because, and that's the end of the quote, by the way, and they should be, because when they come for one, they come for all. That's not to be hyperbolic. It's not to be, what's the word I would use? Fear-mongering. It is a truth. During wartime Britain, many different industries were brought into the control, the employ, the management of the central government. It took years, it took decades in order to finally get a leader who is willing to unwrap the finances of these corporations, previously corporations, from the government itself. Just because it is happening once doesn't mean that it's going to continue to happen again. I'm not trying to make that false claim of a slippery slope, because there's very little evidence in the United States of us taking over industries and maintaining them beyond wartime periods. Of course, we deployed a lot of different funding, resources, and tactics during our major wars. But you can look across countries and see small takeovers of normally industries before companies. And ask yourself the question, when we're competing with someone who has a mixed economy, a more direct control of their economy, and we're trying to outpace them, and this is the first move in your big plan to ensure that the funding maintains in these sectors in order to compete with them, I would say it's not unreasonable to see a world in which they're considered a national security companies that have national security implications and more control going to the government as they try to spin this up in order to win in the AI race and keep manufacturing of these critical materials in the United States. But hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a little crazy. That's fair enough. I would love to see 15 years on, if there's not a corrective measure by the end of this administration, if that was to actually be the case, if they were to stop. But hey, that's enough for me. Let's actually get to our daily delight. This one comes from the Daily Bunny, and the link will be in the description below the like and subscribe button. It's a photo. It's a little guy poking his head out of his cardboard box and say, "Oh, hello, you rang?" It's honestly kind of adorable. It's something that I think anybody could enjoy. So if you need a little bit of a smile going into the rest of the day, go down there. The link will be there. And also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Spotify, as well as the Twitter handle at your DailyFlip, where I post the links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 6 and 6, our international news segment, on Tuesday and Thursday. It's all about having a story from each continent, populated continent minus Antarctica, and getting it to you in under 6 minutes. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.